So in this video, we're going to continue in section 13.1. Again, that's in your book. It's 14.1 in the math lab. And we just talked about the English system in the previous video. Talked about converting from miles to feet, or miles to yards, or miles per hour to feet per second, and so on. And so we're going to talk now about the metric system. And the metric system is really an easier system to use because it's based on tens. So in the metric system, you have a kilo. Prefix kilo means a factor of 1,000. Okay. The prefix hecto is a factor of 100. Prefix deca is a factor of 10. If it's deci, so that's different than deca, then it's a factor of a tenth. And then centa, like a centimeter, is a factor of 100, or a hundredth. Okay, so you can see the decimal there. And then milla, like a millimeter, for example, is 1,000th. So, just kind of put this in perspective. If we're talking about 1 meter, well, a centimeter, centa being 100th, a centimeter is 100th of a meter. A millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. Okay? And so, this little chart here maybe will help you. If our base unit is the meter, and we use an M to represent meter, we have decimeter, centimeter, millimeter that are all smaller than that. So again, 1 meter, a decimeter is a tenth of that. A centimeter is 100th of that. A millimeter is 1,000th. On the bigger side, we typically use kilometers, right? That is typically the measurement we use compared to maybe miles. So depending on, in the United States, again, we're going to use the English system, but if you were to go to the UK, or you were to go to Europe or somewhere like that, they're going to use kilometers. And that's going to be their unit of measure they use. And so here, a kilometer is 1,000 meters. So just kind of put this in perspective. A meter is roughly 39 inches, so it's a little bit longer than a yard. And so it takes 1,000 of those to be a kilometer. Okay? A hectometer is 100 meters, and then a decameter is 10 meters. These two are not often used because, again, we either use meters or we use kilometers. But you could use either one. And so some basic benchmarks to help you kind of know about how long each of these is. If you stretch your arm, say your right arm, straight out to the right, from your opposite shoulder to the tip of your finger is roughly about a meter. Okay, again, it's not exact. Obviously, some people have shorter arms than others and so on, but roughly it's about a meter. The width of your hand is roughly a decimeter, so a tenth of that meter. The width of your finger is roughly a centimeter. Again, not completely accurate. Some are shorter, or some are smaller, some are larger. And then a millimeter is the width of a paper clip, but it's just this part. Okay, just like if you were to take a paper clip and stretch it out where it's straight, then it would just be that one part would give you about a millimeter. And so just to kind of put this in perspective for you, so it would take 1,000 of those paper clips lined up, stretched out straight, 1,000 of those to equal that 1 meter, where it would take 100 of your finger widths to be a meter. or 10 of your hand widths to be a meter, and so on. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea about how that works and what those measurements would be like. So as we talk about conversion, we're going to convert from meters to centimeters to kilometers to millimeters, kind of all over the place here. And so if we start with our base of 1 meter, if we're going smaller, decimeter, centimeter, millimeter, if we think about our decimal being here, if we move to a decimeter, we're going to move that decimal one place left. So it'd be 0.1, not 0.01. So it'd be 0.1. That's a tenth of a meter. For a centimeter, we're going to move 2 places, the decimal place 2 units left. So it'd be 0.01 meters. For a millimeter, it's 0.001 meters. Again, moving the decimal 3 units to the left. As we get bigger than a meter, we're going to move our decimal place right. So a decameter would be 10 meters. A hectometer would be 100 meters. And then a kilometer would be 1,000 meters. So again, it's moving our decimal place 1 unit right, 2 units right, 3 units right, and so on. Okay? And so as we do this conversion, our next slide is going to have a few conversions we're going to do. You'll see that show up. All right, so here we go. We've got 1.4 kilometers. So again, km, if you go back to here, kilometer is km, which is 1,000 meters, right? So we want to convert from 1.4 kilometers to meters. Well, here's the great thing about this. 1.4 kilometers, if we're going down to meters, okay, go back to this slide. If we're going to go from kilometers here to meters, well, how many decimal places do we need to move our decimal? Because, again, we're moving it left from kilometers, right? As we go to hectometer, we move it 1 unit left. As we go to decameter, move it another unit, and so on. So you'd have to move it 3 units to get it back down to a meter. So you got 1, 2, 3 decimal places. And so if we move our decimal place 1, 2, 3, putting zeros there, then this must be 1,400 meters, which you see there. And what's great about the metric system is that it is strictly moving decimals one way or the other, because everything's based on a 10. And our numerical system is in base 10. You know, you get to 9 and then you roll over and have another place value for 10, right? And when you get to 100, there's another place value, and so on. So everything's based on a base of 10. Now, if we take 285 millimeters and we want to convert it to meter, well, again, for millimeters, we need to move our decimal 1, 2, 3 places, but now to the right. Okay, so if we move our decimal place from here 1, 2, 3 units right, then it should be 0.285 meters, which again is what you see there. And now look at this one. We want to go from 0.03 kilometers to centimeters. Now, again, go back. I like this chart here. So from kilometers here to centimeters. Well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units that we need to move our decimal. Again, moving it left. And so if we take this and move it, I said left, it's actually, yeah, that's right. So if you move your decimal, to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. Then you would say that it is 3,000 centimeters to make 1 kilometer. Now, if you get confused on moving it left versus moving it right, just think about as you move your decimal to the left, the numbers, if it's a decimal, then it's getting smaller. So, for example, the kilometer, it's the biggest unit. So we want to move our decimal place to the right as we go to a smaller unit. If it starts with a smaller unit, like the 285 millimeters, well, if we're going to a bigger unit, then we're going to move it to the left, because we know that the number of millimeters is going to be more than the amount of meters, because it's a smaller unit. So you just have to think about, am I making this a bigger number or a smaller number? Obviously, the decimal places, the more decimal places you have, the smaller it's going to get, versus if it's making it whole numbers and bigger whole numbers, then it would be obviously a bigger number. Okay, so just be aware of that. That should be something you can do, I hope, without a whole lot of issues. It's just a matter of moving our decimal place. Okay. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Be glad to answer any questions that you have. We'll stop the video here. We'll continue on with measurement in the next video.